I was humiliated by my husband during a holiday trip, but what I discovered later was even worse. Jennifer had always been the kind of woman who found solace in simplicity. Growing up in a small town, where everyone knew each other's stories and dreams often felt bigger than the world around her, she'd learned early on to treasure the little joys: a warm cup of coffee in the morning, the laughter of neighbors, the gentle sway of the trees outside her modest home. When she married Thomas, a man whose charm had promised a life of quiet happiness, she believed they were stepping into a future built on trust and love. But as the family packed the last bags into their aging sedan, preparing for their long-awaited holiday trip, she had no idea this journey would turn her world upside down in ways she could never have imagined. The air was thick with anticipation as they arrived at the seaside resort, the sun casting golden hues over the restless waves. Jennifer's heart fluttered with hope. She wanted this trip to be a fresh start, a welcome escape from the monotony of everyday struggles and the silent tensions that had been growing between her and Thomas. Their friends had joined them, people she had always liked but never felt truly close to. In Jennifer's eyes, this gathering was an opportunity to rebuild bridges, to create moments that might patch the invisible cracks in her marriage. She smiled as she helped unpack, the salty breeze ruffling her simple hairdo. But that smile faded quickly. Dinner was meant to be a casual affair, laughter bouncing between tables, the clinking of glasses punctuating stories. Instead, it became the stage for her humiliation. Thomas, who had seemed distant in recent months, had won too many drinks, the irritation lurking beneath his calm exterior bubbling to the surface. When Jennifer hesitated to offer her opinion on the group's itinerary, perhaps out of exhaustion or a desire to avoid conflict, Thomas's tone shifted sharply. "Can you stop being so indecisive for once?" he snapped, his words slicing through the music and chatter. The room fell silent. Eyes turned toward them, friends exchanging glances loaded with discomfort. Jennifer's cheeks burned, a sudden flood of heat rushing through her veins. She opened her mouth to reply, but the voice inside her faltered, shrinking under the weight of his public rebuke. The laughter that followed, forced and awkward, felt like nails on a chalkboard, erasing the hopeful peace she had clung to all day. She excused herself quietly, retreating toward the balcony where the salty air couldn't mask the sting in her chest. Alone under the stars, she fought to hold back tears that threatened to spill. The man who was supposed to protect her had shattered her dignity like a fragile glass tossed carelessly aside. As she leaned against the railing, the distant sound of waves crashing mirrored the turmoil inside her, relentless and unforgiving. Jennifer's mind raced. Was she truly indecisive? Was there something inherently wrong with her? Or was this a cruel twist of fate, designed to remind her of her place, hidden beneath Thomas's commanding presence? The humiliation wasn't just about one sharp moment, it was a culmination of quiet dismissals, whispered disappointments, and now, a public spectacle that would surely become a painful memory stored behind forced smiles. Yet, beneath the whirlwind of shame and disbelief, a small voice stirred within Jennifer, a whisper of resilience she couldn't yet fully grasp. "This is not who you are," it murmured. "You deserve more." Slowly, she straightened her shoulders, wiped her damp cheeks, and took a deep breath, as if drawing strength from the vast sky. Despite the searing embarrassment, the crushing loneliness wrapped around her fragile heart, she refused to let this moment define her. Somewhere between the shadows of that night and the dawning realization of what had been lost, Jennifer made a vow, a silent promise to herself to seek the truth, to understand the cracks and causes, and to find a way back to the woman she once was, or perhaps, to discover who she was meant to become. But for now, as the distant laughter resumed inside the villa and the stars watched silently overhead, all she wanted was to be heard, to be seen. Did anyone else feel the weight of her pain? Or was she destined to carry it alone? If you've ever felt crushed by the words or actions of someone you love, have you found a way to reclaim your voice and your dignity? Hold on tight, Jennifer's journey is only just beginning, and sometimes, the darkest nights lead to the brightest dawns. The following days at the resort did little to ease Jennifer's sinking heart. Every glance from Thomas felt colder, his presence more distant despite the sunny backdrop of the sea and the laughter that echoed around them. At dinner, he overlooked her completely, speaking over her when she tried to contribute to conversations, dismissing her ideas with curt nods or impatient sighs. The friends who witnessed the first eruption of anger seemed to shrink away afterward, never quite meeting Jennifer's eyes, turning conversations into awkward glimpses and silences that screamed louder than any words. One afternoon, as the group gathered by the pool, Jennifer attempted to share a story from her childhood, a rare moment where she felt a thread of warmth connecting her to others. But Thomas abruptly interrupted, a sharp comment dripping with condescension. "That's not how it happened," he interjected, smirking as he shot a glance around the circle, as if daring anyone to challenge him. The laughter that followed was hollow, like a tightening noose around her chest. Jennifer felt the swelling tide of humiliation rise again, but this time it wasn't just about Thomas, it was the way the others seemed complicit, their eyes reflecting discomfort or maybe pity, but never compassion. She caught a quick glimpse of a friend's sympathetic glance, but it was distant, fleeting. Jennifer's hands trembled slightly beneath the table, fingers curling tight around the fabric of her dress. Every word Thomas spoke chipped away a piece of her confidence. She recalled the dreams she kept locked inside, the hope for a family filled with kindness and respect, the wish for shared laughter and support. Instead, she was facing a public unraveling, a spectacle of her worthlessness in the eyes of people she thought had cared. The vibrant colors of the holiday, the glowing sunset, the sparkling water, felt drowned in shades of shame. At night, alone in their cramped hotel room, the atmosphere thickened with silence that spoke louder than any argument. Jennifer stared at the thin ceiling, shoulder pressed to the cold wall, the faint hum of the air conditioner mixing with the pounding of her heart. Thomas turned away without a word, retreating into his own world, leaving her engulfed in an icy solitude. She reached for her phone, scrolling through old photos of their courtship, the early days filled with smiles and promises that now seemed like a cruel joke. Her thoughts spiraled. Was she overreacting? Was she imagining the cruelty when maybe Thomas was just stressed? Her mind bridled between self-doubt and the raw wound left by his words. She had been taught to forgive, to keep the peace, to find strength and endurance, but the cost of that peace now seemed unbearable. Her reflection in the mirror was unfamiliar, eyes dulled, lips pressed tight, the softness replaced by a shadow of hurt. Jennifer craved to confide in someone but hesitated. Who would believe her? Would they see her as weak, or blame her for provoking Thomas? The sting of isolation settled deep. Every time she tried to voice her pain, her throat constricted, and words caught like thorns. As she lay awake that night, the silence shattered by the ticking clock, she wondered how many more nights she could survive trapped in this quiet torment. Yet, among the emotional wreckage, a flicker of defiance flared inside her. She refused to be erased, to vanish quietly beneath the weight of humiliation. But questions gnawed relentlessly. How had she ended up here? Did Thomas even recognize the damage he inflicted? And if he didn't, what hope was there for healing? The answers seemed as distant as the horizon beyond the crashing waves outside their window. If you've ever felt the world closing in as those you trust turn cold and condemning, how did you find the courage to face what lies beneath? Jennifer's story is far from over. Sometimes the most painful truths lead us toward unexpected paths. Keep watching, to see how a heart burdened with shame begins its fight for freedom. Jennifer woke up the next morning with a weight pressing down on her chest, heavier than the night before. The disappointment and humiliation from the previous days sat like stones, cold and immovable. She had desperately wanted this trip to be a sanctuary, a moment where she could breathe without fear or shame, but instead, it felt like a prison. She tried to shake off the memories, but they clung to her like stubborn shadows. That day, wanting to reclaim just a sliver of normalcy, Jennifer decided to explore a quiet part of the beach alone. The sun was warm on her skin, and the gentle rhythm of the waves was soothing, but even in the beauty of the ocean, she couldn't escape the ache inside her. Her mind kept replaying the scenes, the sharp words, the shared laughter that wasn't hers, the cold rejection. She thought about talking to someone, anyone, maybe one of the friends, or even a stranger she could trust. But fear held her back. What if they judged her? What if they blamed her for Thomas's cruelty? More than anything, she feared being invisible, seen but ignored, just like she was lately. Returning to the hotel, Jennifer found a small cafe nearby where she could sit and think quietly. As she sipped a lukewarm coffee, her phone buzzed with a message from her sister, Mia. She had been distant lately, unable to understand the growing tension in Jennifer's marriage, but now her words carried warmth and concern. "Hey, Jen. I haven't heard much from you. Are you okay? Remember, I'm here if you need to talk." The message was simple, yet it pierced through the fog of loneliness she'd been engulfed in. Jennifer hesitated, then typed back. The conversation that unfolded, sparse but honest, reminded her of a lifeline. Mia's unwavering support gave her a small beacon of hope. She was reminded that she wasn't entirely alone in this struggle. But even with this encouragement, Jennifer's internal battle raged. Doubts about her worthiness and fears about the future clashed with the ember of resilience stirring within. That evening, she confronted Thomas quietly, hoping to understand his erratic behavior, to find a reason beyond the sharp words and cold silences. But the conversation shattered quickly. Thomas brushed her aside, his explanations shallow and dismissive. Instead of apologies, he offered vague excuses and blame, turning the accusations back on her as if her feelings were inconvenient burdens. Jennifer felt a crushing loneliness. Her attempt to bridge the growing gap between them only widened it. Tears blurred her vision, but she refused to let Thomas see her fall apart. Instead, she withdrew inward, shutting down the part of herself that longed for affection and respect. Days stretched into weeks, and Jennifer's world felt smaller and darker. Yet in the midst of this despair, a memory surfaced, her grandmother's advice about resilience and the strength to rise after every fall. The words echoed quietly, reminding her that she was more than the pain inflicted upon her. She started to look for small signs of hope, reaching out cautiously to the few allies she could trust. A kind hotel receptionist who offered gentle smiles, a fellow traveler who listened without judgment, and mainly her sister's distant but steadfast presence kept the faint flame alive. Jennifer's journey was far from easy. She grappled with deep wounds born from humiliation and betrayal, with isolation that wrapped around her like a cold fog. Yet, within the turmoil, she began to gather fragments of courage, understanding that the path ahead would demand facing not only Thomas but the harsh truths simmering beneath their fractured relationship. Have you ever faced moments when your own strength felt fragile, yet something inside refused to break? Sometimes, the first step toward healing is recognizing the small sparks of hope amid the darkness. Jennifer's story continues. Stay close to witness how those sparks might ignite a new beginning. The breaking point came unexpectedly on a stormy night that seemed to mirror the turmoil within Jennifer's heart. Thunder rumbled beyond the windows, rain pelting relentlessly against the glass, as if the heavens themselves mourned the darkness settling over her world. Thomas, who had become increasingly volatile, snapped at the smallest slight, his mood swinging wildly between cold indifference and sharp aggression. That evening, the group had gathered to watch a local music performance, hoping to lift spirits, but Jennifer's hope was short-lived. As the night progressed, Thomas's annoyance simmered beneath his polite veneer. When Jennifer reached out to hold his hand, seeking a moment of connection, he yanked his arm away with such force that it sent a jolt of shock through her. The room fell into an awkward silence, the faint melody from the stage overshadowed by the tension in the air. Thomas's eyes flashed with anger as he muttered cutting words under his breath, loud enough for those nearby to hear. "Stop pretending, Jennifer. Everyone's seen through you." The sting of those words stabbed deeper than any physical pain. Guests exchanged glances, whispers rippling through the crowd like a tide of judgment. Jennifer felt suddenly raw, exposed, her humiliation now absolute and public. Tears burned in her eyes, blurring the faces around her. She wanted to vanish, to disappear into the shadows where no one could see her suffering. Instead, she mustered the last shred of her dignity and excused herself, retreating to the darkened hallway alone. But just as despair threatened to swallow her whole, a gentle hand rested lightly on her shoulder. Startled, she turned to see Lily, a kindly woman from the group, someone who had always offered small smiles and listening ears. "You don't deserve this," Lily whispered softly, her eyes filled with quiet understanding. "We all see what's really happening, and you're stronger than you think." In that moment, something shifted inside Jennifer. The isolation cracked, allowing a sliver of light to seep through. Lily's kindness wasn't a handout, it was a lifeline, an invitation to reclaim her worth. Emboldened by this unexpected support, Jennifer began to ask questions, to seek the truth behind Thomas's behavior. The more she dug, the darker and more disturbing the secrets she uncovered. Late into sleepless nights, she pieced together fragments of hidden conversations and encrypted messages on Thomas's phone, revelations of dealings with dangerous people, and lies woven like cobwebs to trap her in ignorance. Her trust shattered entirely, and the life she thought she knew crumbled into dust. Not only had Thomas betrayed her heart, but he was entangled in dangerous webs she could no longer ignore. Confronting the reality was overwhelming, fear gripped her as much as sorrow. But beneath the terror, a fierce determination began to grow. Jennifer realized that the greatest cruelty wasn't just his words or actions during that humiliating holiday. It was the betrayal of her trust, the illusion of safety that had masked the venom beneath. Now, armed with the truth and the unforeseen alliance of people like Lily, she prepared for a fight she never expected but was ready to face. If you've ever been blindsided by betrayal beneath the surface of love, how did you find the courage to face what lurked in the shadows? Jennifer's story is turning toward an uncertain but hopeful horizon. Stay with her as she battles to reclaim her life and her dignity from the darkness that threatened to consume her. The confrontation was inevitable. Jennifer stood at the edge of a crossroads, her hands trembling not with fear, but with the steady pulse of newfound courage. The secrets she had unearthed about Thomas were like jagged shards piercing through the facade of their marriage, and she could no longer pretend the life they led was anything but a dangerous lie. The quiet hotel room, once a sanctuary turned prison, now became the battleground where she would claim her freedom. She confronted Thomas calmly one evening, her voice steady but resolute. She laid bare everything she had discovered, the hidden messages, the web of deceit, the dark associations he maintained behind closed doors. For the first time, the man who had belittled and humiliated her found himself cornered by the woman he had tried to keep silent. Thomas's defenses erupted in anger, threats spilling like poison venom, attempts to intimidate and silence her. But Jennifer, bolstered by the unexpected support of Lily and her sister Mia, refused to back down. She wasn't the frightened woman from that humiliating holiday anymore, she was a force determined to reclaim her life. Friends who had once looked away began to stand by Jennifer's side. Lily helped connect her with resources and a support network of women who had faced similar betrayals. Mia's unwavering encouragement was a constant reminder that Jennifer was not alone, that her voice mattered. Together, they mapped out steps to expose Thomas's dangerous activities, working quietly but deliberately to bring him to justice. The threat was real, but so was Jennifer's growing strength. The turning point came with the police's intervention, a swift reaction to the evidence Jennifer presented. The man who had once ruled her life with sarcasm and cruelty was now confronted with consequences beyond his control. His reputation shattered, his control broken, Thomas was arrested, and the layers of his deception unveiled to those who had once blindly trusted him. Jennifer watched as the man who had humiliated her crumbled under the weight of his own actions, a stark contrast to the woman who stood tall despite the scars he had left. The path was not easy. Jennifer wrestled with the trauma and the echoes of humiliation that lingered, but each day brought small victories, a smile without apology, moments of genuine laughter, the reclaiming of self-respect that no one could take away. The support she embraced was a balm for her battered spirit, and the knowledge that she had fought back gave her a sense of empowerment that radiated beyond the confines of her past pain. If you have ever faced a moment when justice seemed impossible, when the wounds inflicted threatened to consume you, what inspired you to keep fighting? Jennifer's journey is a testament to the power of resilience, to standing firm when the world seems set against you. Her story reminds us that while the past may haunt, it need not define our future. The climax of Jennifer's journey was also its rebirth, transforming raw pain into unstoppable strength. And as the storm of her past began to clear, she found within herself a light that no darkness could extinguish. Stay tuned to see how Jennifer's story closes with hope and the promise of new beginnings. Months had passed since the storm had quieted, and though the scars remained, Jennifer found herself standing on firmer ground than she ever thought possible. The echoes of humiliation no longer reverberated through her every thought. Instead, they had transformed into lessons etched deeply into her soul, reminders of the strength she had carved out from the darkest moments. She had reclaimed her life piece by piece, embracing a future where her worth wasn't defined by the cruelty of others, but by the courage she fostered within herself. Jennifer had moved into a small apartment, modest but filled with light and the scent of fresh flowers, a stark contrast to the shadows she had left behind. Friends who had once seemed distant now formed a circle of genuine support, with Lily and Mia at the heart of it, their steady presence a constant source of warmth. Jennifer took new steps toward healing, volunteering at a local community center where women shared stories similar to hers, finding strength together in shared vulnerability. The very humiliation that had once threatened to break her became a bridge, an avenue to inspire others who felt trapped and silenced. One evening, while journaling in the soft glow of her living room lamp, Jennifer reflected on the journey that had brought her here. The humiliation, the betrayals, the discovery of truths darker than she could have imagined, all these had tested her in unimaginable ways. But through the pain, she uncovered a truth that no one could take away. Her resilience was her power. She realized that honoring herself meant never settling for less than respect and kindness, and that sometimes, the bravest act is simply choosing to stand up and walk away. Jennifer's story was no longer one of shame and suffering. It had become a testament to human endurance and the unyielding pursuit of dignity. She knew the path ahead might still have its challenges, but she faced it with a heart unburdened, open to possibilities and new joys. The woman who once felt invisible in the shadow of humiliation had risen, radiant and unbreakable. If this story resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button and remember, no matter how deep the darkness, the light of your true self can always guide you home. See you in our next story.